In this video, we will create a currency conversion process using the XC currency converter object that we created in the last two videos. I have an Excel file here named currency exercise, and if I open it, you can see there are three columns. You need to convert these values into INR from their existing currency, which is given in the column A, and write it into the column C. In order to create this process, go to Studio, right-click on Process, click Create Process. I'll name it as Currency Conversion. And click Next. Then write a description. And click Finish. Then double-click the process to open it in Process Studio. Our first step is to open the Excel file and get the data into a collection. So I will drag and drop an action stage. Double-click. Name it as Create Instance. Select MS Excel VBO and the action Create Instance. I'll leave the Enable Events as blank, and under the Outputs tab, click this button to create a data item to store the handle number, and click OK. Next, I'll drag and drop an action stage. Double-click. Name it as Open Workbook. Select MS Excel VBO and the action Open Workbook. Then I'll drag and drop the handle data item. Then for the file name, I'll go to the folder where the file is placed, hold down the Shift key and right-click, and I'll select Copy as Path. Then I'll paste it here. I'll then go to the Outputs, click this button to create a data item for the workbook name to be stored. I'll click OK. Next, I will create another action stage to get the workbook as collection. So I will double-click, name it as Get to Collection, select MS Excel VBO and Get Worksheet as Collection. I'll drag and drop the handle, then the workbook name, and I will enter the worksheet name in double quotes, which is Sheet 1 with S in uppercase. I'll then go to the output, enter a name for the collection where we want to store, which will be Input Collection, and click this icon to create the collection. Then click OK. Now let's test this portion of the code. I will link the stages, click Reset, and go. Now if you open the collection and go to the Current Values tab, you can see that all the values are populated. So the first part of the program is ready. Click Reset. The next step is to launch the XC Currency Converter website. So I will drag and drop an action stage, name it as Launch. And here you can see that the business object XC Currency Converter, which we created, is showing up. So I'll select that and select the action Launch. We'll check the inputs and outputs, and we don't have any, so we will click OK. Once the application is launched, we have 5 steps. Enter input value, select from currency, select to currency, select go, and read the result. Now these 5 steps have to be repeated for all the rows in the collection, which means we need to create these 5 steps inside a loop. So we will drag and drop a loop stage, double click, and select the input collection. Next, we will drag and drop an action stage, double click, name it as Enter Input Value, select XC Currency Converter, and select Enter Input Value. Now we need to specify the input value. We will pass this from the collection. If you remember in video 14, collection and loop stages, I explained that in order to represent a collection field, you need to specify in the format collection name.field name. So here we need to get the input value from the amount field, which is of the collection named input collection. So I will type input collection.amount. But the collection shown here is slightly different from the way it was shown in the video 14. In that video, the fields of the collection were shown under the collection name, but here you see only the collection name. You don't see the field names. The reason is here we only created the collection, but we did not define the various fields. they will automatically get picked from the fields from the Excel sheet. But in video 14, we define the fields by adding them under the Fields tab of the collection. That is the reason why it is not showing here, because at this point of time, Blue Prism does not know what fields are going to be in the collection. This is called an undefined collection, while the collection we created in video 14 was a defined collection. Alright, so I will click OK. Next, I will add a stage to select the from currency. I'll double click, name it as enter from currency, select XC currency converter, and the action enter from currency. Now again, we need to specify the field from which the from currency has to be picked up, and that will be the currency field. So I'll type input collection dot currency and click OK. Next, we will add an action stage to select the to currency. Double click. I'll name it as enter to currency. Select XC currency converter and the action enter to currency. Now here, the to currency is going to be INR for all the rows. So I can directly type it as INR here, or I will create another data item and pass it through that. We'll create another data item instead of entering it here statically. So I'll click OK, drag and drop a data item and name it as to currency. Select the data type as text, enter the initial value as INR and click OK. Then open the enter to currency stage, drag and drop the to currency data item. Next, we will add an action stage to click the go button. I'll name it as click go. Select XC currency converter and the action click go and click OK. The last step in the loop is to read the result and write it to the collection. So we will add an action stage, double click, name it as read result, select XC currency converter and get result. Now for this stage, we have specified an output which is the result. So we need to store it in this column which is named INR. So I'll type input collection.inr and click OK. Next, we need to write this collection back to the Excel file. So I will add another action stage, name it as update Excel, select MS Excel VBO and select the action write collection. And I will fill in the inputs. And click OK. Finally, we need to add an action stage to save and close the workbook. So I will drag and drop the action, name it as save and close workbook. Select MS Excel VBO and select close workbook. I'll drag and drop the handle number, the workbook name, and here we have a flag which asks if I want to save the file. So we will enter it as true. Click OK, and we will join all the stages. Now let's run the process and see if it works. I'm going to decrease the process speed for now to see every step clearly. And I'll click reset and go. You'll not be able to see any of the Excel operation because I have not added the show workbook stage, so it all happens in the background. I'm going to fast forward this video a little bit and we'll be back. Okay, so the process is completed. I'll go to the folder, and when I open the Excel file, I can see that the values are successfully populated. So our process worked exactly like we designed. In the next video, we will talk about static weight and dynamic weight.